everybody who's working in most professional situations is just slammed with email. What I found over the last 19 years, asking these questions, I said, first I found some statistics that are just crazy. Average person is spending a little more than 2 hours a day. Average professional email user, a little more than 2 hours a day on email. Most of the audiences that I'm speaking with when I ask that question, that's on the low side of things. I think yesterday when I did the program for staff here, they were giving me a range of 3 to 7 per day. Yeah. But then there's this
over
kicker,
half your day.
A kicker follow-ups thing that I ask is, so how many of you have had formal strategic level email management training? And when I ask this to new audiences that have not seen me before, it's less than 5%. In the United States, in Canada, in Europe, it's less than 5% have had training on a tool that takes 25 to 50% or more of each workday.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners.
Welcome to the Business of Advice podcast. Chances are you're listening to this podcast in your car, during a run, or you're probably multitasking in some way. And our guest is with us today to help with that very thing. Randy Dean is an expert on time and email management and the best ways to use technology to help you manage these beasts in work. So, in fact, Randy wrote Taming the Email Beast, as well as the producer and creator of several highly rated video-based self-study courses. He has nearly 30 years of experience using and teaching an advanced time management personal organization system. But here's probably the best thing I can say about Randy. We are recording this in my office. He was here yesterday speaking to our team here at Advisors Excel. The third time he has been to AE just to work with our team on how they can utilize these tools better. But today is actually going to be speaking to our advisors teams. So we do a training here called Elite Team Training, where our top advisors can send their staff here to learn from our team and Randy. And so got probably 150 people in the office today that are also going to hear this. So this is going to be one of those episodes that not only is going to be valuable for you as you listen, but one that you're going to want to share with your team. So Randy, welcome to the podcast.
Great being here.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. Tell about your journey to becoming an expert on, I would say, not just email, but time management in general.
It was, it's a funny little story. 1990, 91, I had just graduated undergraduate studies from Western Michigan University, Kalamazoo, Michigan, got my first professional job. And I was the subscriber and circulation coordinator for a scientific journal. And I was driving my boss nuts. I was I had a lot of energy, but I was not terribly corralled with it. And I kept popping into her office 5, 6, 7 times a day asking questions. How do I do this? How do I do that? And after, I don't know, maybe a few weeks, not even months, weeks of driving her a little bit crazy, she goes, Randy, 2 things. 1, starting today, I want you at around 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., I want you to keep a list of things you need to ask me questions on. And then you can come, unless it's on fire, you can come bug me at 10 and 2. Otherwise, I got my work to do too. Right, yeah, because I was driving her nuts. And she goes, and the second thing, we're going to send you to a time management program. Huh. Isn't that funny? And so I actually got to go way back in 90 or 91, Kalamazoo, Michigan, a program on how to set up my planner. You remember the planners? Yep. I actually learned the time design strategy, but there was also Franklin Covey. And it sort of opened my mind to a whole bunch of these different philosophies. So I really sort of went down the path and started sponging in all of the stuff and became, big fan of David Allen, Getting Things Done, Stephen Covey, First Things First and 7 Habits, a little bit even of the rah-rah, Tony Robbins, Les Brown, stuff like that. And just was sort of soaking everything in, but it really fundamentally changed the way I did my work. And then what was really interesting is, so I became such an advocate, almost evangelist of how to use the planner, that the people I worked with started coming in and asking me, how'd you get that set up like that? Mm-hmm. Next thing I know, I'm like 22 years old. I'm training my entire professional staff in the organization on how to set up their planners. And so that was the beginning, and I just found that I got a kick out of that. Now, I didn't turn it into a business until 2004, so I went back, got my MBA at Michigan State, go green, followed that up with working a couple years in the corporate headquarters at Procter & Gamble, and then going back to Michigan State to be their director of admissions for their full-time MBA. But in each of those places, I was still sort of teaching people how to do this stuff. And then at P&G in the late 90s, I started using Microsoft Outlook for the first time. And I looked at the structure of Outlook and what I was doing with my planner and said, I think I could rearrange all this and put this in here, especially if I can get it to sync up with my Palm Pilot or my BlackBerry. So now I'm going back in time and dating
people
myself.
On the podcast will know what we're talking
exactly.
about.
But that was sort of and it got to a point where the people that I was working with in several of these organizations were like, dude, you got to get out on the road. You got stuff.
That's cool.
It obviously is your passion, interest, hobby, obsession, but it's also good content.
Yeah.
It could help people. So get out on the road. And so finally, 2004, I hung out my own shingle, and I've been doing this ever since.
Well, I said yesterday when I introduced you, I've implemented a lot of the strategies here. Almost always have my inbox right around zero. I know Dave, my partner, uses it. He gave you a plug before last week, and then Jake, who leads our sales team, said the same thing. So I know it's been valuable for us. One of the things you said there too, and this is why I think everyone who listens, tends to be more the entrepreneur that listens a little bit to the podcast, but you're going to want to share this with your team because, like you said, I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we get interrupted throughout the day, or we're leaders of the organization with our team coming in with questions and needing help. And so if we can take this and apply it across the organization, which is why we keep bringing you back. We hire new people. We want to make sure they hear it. The more you can implement some of these strategies across your organization, it's going to make your life easier too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Let's dig into the big one. I should bring up too, I'm a huge Kansas State fan. So, we did just beat you on the tournament.
That was such a good game.
It was fun.
I was at the end, I'm like, oh man, that one more free throw, and man, that was such a good game.
That was a fun one.
You have a heck of a player in that point guard.
Yeah, he was fun to watch during that tournament.
Yeah.
So just not quite far enough, but we'll get there. So let's jump into the big one, right?
Yeah.
So email is probably one of the biggest items, and I think everyone's life pretty much. We tend to spend a ton of time there. But I think it's one of the things that I've seen, and I'm not gonna call them out by their last name, but two of our advisors, I was with them a month ago. We had an event going on in Austin, and we were kind of talking about this. And I told them I'm gonna send them the link. They've got to watch your stuff and your YouTube channel. We'll talk about that later. But both of them, Brian and David, so they'll know who I'm talking about. Both of them show me, and they have over 100,000 unread emails in their inbox. And I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, like I'd have anxiety. I'm like, here, just select them all and hit delete, right? And it's just start all over. So the reason I bring that up is I think it's something that's such a big part of all of us doing work in life, but we don't do the best job of having a strategy around it. So maybe talk about why you think people don't have a great strategy, and then we're going to jump into some of the things that they can do. Yeah,
well, I mean, I've been leading programs. So what was really interesting, when I started in 2004, the program that I started with was more of a general time management using Outlook with a little bit on email management. But what I noticed when I was doing these programs is that in the room, people were like, email, I need email, help me with email. And being an entrepreneur who had just started a business, I sensed there was an opportunity there. Yep. So I decided to deep dive that niche, and it's been a really good niche because, as you said, it's ubiquitous. Everybody who's working in most professional situations is just slammed with email. And what I found over the last 19 years, asking these questions, I said, first I found some statistics that are just crazy. Average person is spending a little more than 2 hours a day. Average professional email user, a little more than 2 hours a day on email. Most of the audiences that I'm speaking with when I ask that question, that's on the low side of things. I think yesterday when I did the program for staff here, they were giving me a range of 3 to 7 per day. Yeah. But then there's just this
over half your day.
A kicker follow-ups thing that I ask is, so how many of you have had formal strategic level email management training? And when I ask this to new audiences that have not seen me before, it's less than 5%. in the United States, in Canada, in Europe, it's less than 5% have had training on a tool that takes 25 to 50% or more of each workday. The reason they're having trouble is they're self-taught. And it's sort of expected. You walk in and they go, hey, here's your email.
Yep.
Good luck to you. And so it's really been interesting to see. Frankly, I'm really happy about all the dysfunction. It's given me a good career.
Great business.
Yeah, I get to walk around and just say, hey, why didn't you do it this way? It's a little bit better and easier, you know?
Well, it's wild to think about that. You know, half of your day is spent in this vehicle, and you've had no formal training on it. So let's talk about that. You wrote a great book called Taming the Email Beast, and I know we don't have time to go through everything. We'll talk about some of the resources you have, but are there maybe 2 or 3 key strategies that you've seen that take Brian and David, who have 100,000 unread, emails in their inbox? Are there maybe a few key strategies that you think people can implement that are going to reduce some stress and anxiety around your inbox?
Absolutely. I think there's 2 or 3, and a couple of these I actually learned before I was deep diving email way back in the early 90s from David Allen when I took that training. The first one is if something's quick, don't keep it. Do it. Don't keep it, do it. It's quick. Get it done, get it moving, get it gone. Don't let the little quick stuff stack because we're getting slammed with so many inputs. I read a statistic the other day that said the average American adult, when you look at all forms of input and all advertisements served on those forms of input, all media, email, office communications, we're getting 5,000 to 10,000 potential inputs every day. Now, obviously, we have to be screening out 95% of that or else we just would do nothing.
Yeah.
But that's what's hitting us. And if you don't have strategies for that, you have to do something. So I'm saying in professional work and even in my personal life, I try to do this. Quick things, get them done, get them gone, keep them moving.
Which could just mean delete.
Right. Now at a higher level, though, especially for people that I always like to make the joke that if you've reached a certain level of success where you have excess money and very little time, what I would then recommend is, are you doing too many little things? Because that would indicate that maybe you should be looking at outsourcing some of this stuff or delegating some of this stuff. I think there's a lot of people that could really benefit from maybe shifting some of their workload more strategically to be doing less of the little things and then putting more of the time into the strategy. But when it comes to the other thing is learn the software. So many people are making a real critical mistake right at the beginning when it comes to email management, and it's understandable when you are self-taught. They get an email, they don't have time to deal with it, they mark it unread, or they flag it if they're an Outlook user, or they star it if they're a Gmail user. Mm-hmm. Because I got to look at that again later.
Yep.
But the problem right there, you just got to think about it. What did you just do? You just guaranteed you have to look at that thing again later. Mm-hmm. But not only did you guarantee that, you're going to have a big messy inbox too, because you're keeping everything in the inbox.
Yep.
And if you're getting a heavy enough flow, it's going to get away from you.
You're going to have 100,000.
That's how you get 100,000 emails in an inbox.
Yeah.
And so, I'm trying to advocate a slightly different strategy because both Outlook and Gmail, and you can see this on my YouTube videos, allow you to quickly and easily convert your emails into task, calendar, and contact items. And so why not just turn it right into a task or into a calendar item, which gives better and clearer instruction of what you need to do, and then shift your focus from spending so much time staring at all those emails in your inbox to triaging your inbox, processing the inputs, getting rid of the quick little stuff, and then shifting your focus to your task list and your calendar, and until it's time to go check your email again or go to your next meeting. It just seems to make a lot more sense. And inboxes aren't designed for prioritization. They're designed to handle a flow of incoming items. So, but the task list and calendar functions in both Outlook and Gmail can do that very well and help you see, here's what's going on with my time. Here's what I need to do when I have open blocks of time. What's the biggest and best choice right now? And that's getting really into almost like Stephen Covey, first things first territory. Now what is it that I should be working on next?
That's good.
So,
Let me ask a question that I didn't put in there for you, but just for my friends David and Brian who have that, and probably not just them. I know a lot of people who let their. What do you do in a situation like that? What advice would you give someone who's got 100,000 plus, emails sitting there in their inbox?
It's so funny. You said select all, delete. There's this funny little thing going around, and I make a joke about it in some of my programs called email bankruptcy. And here's how it plays out. You end up just losing it. You get 100,000.
Yeah.
So you send out a note to your entire professional contact list, and here's what it says. As of this date and this time, I am officially declaring email bankruptcy. If you sent me anything prior to this date and this time that you are still expecting a response from, you need to send it again because I just deleted everything. and so what I'm trying to do in my programs is keep people from reaching email bankruptcy. But a second little funny side thought, I think there's probably a lot of people out there in the professional work world that can only work in a job maybe 3 to 5 years. And even if they love the job, love the company, love the people, love the work, they got to leave after 3 to 5 years because they've lost control of their input streams. So like, see you later. Sorry. Yeah, have fun with that. So, and if you have good strategies though, you can greatly reduce that problem because now you're, instead of having this giant mess that's always hanging over your head, that's where it feels like Snoopy on the on top of the doghouse, just leaning over you. And what I always tell people is if you have the strategies, now you can be much more choiceful about what you need to do, and you can be more confident also when you're working out of a task list and calendar environment that you really are working on the most important things. See, I think the problem with a big messy inbox is something in there really matters.
Yeah.
But it makes it feel like everything in there really matters because you don't know what it is that matters. But once you've got it triaged, then you can see it in priority, and then you can make better choices.
How technical of a person or techie of a person? I think sometimes there's this misconception like, well, I don't really know technology well.
Yeah.
And I would say I'm not a super technical person. I know my partner Dave is not at all, and have been able to manage. So just any messaging you'd have around that.
Well, I mean, like I said, anytime you're picking up and learning a new piece of software, especially, it would behoove you to slow down for a minute and actually try to learn a few things. Most of the tips that I think I share are pretty easy to actually do. They're not technically complicated by any means. And now we're living in an age where there's YouTube, and we were talking before we started the live discussion here about that YouTube channel. I've got a lot of my video tips out on that channel, and what I've done mostly are 2 to 10 minute videos.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've got videos for people using Outlook, for Gmail, OneNote, OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, Google Keep, Google Drive, a bunch of content pieces that people can go take a look at. And what I just recommend is, get yourself set up when you're working at your office. Maybe designate 5 to 10 minutes a week. It doesn't even have to be every day. 5, 10 minutes a week. On monitor number 2, bring up one of my videos. On monitor number 1, have your software open and practice.
Yeah.
You're thinking, well, 5 to 10 minutes, I'm so busy, but I'm betting 6 months from now, if you did that once a week, 5 to 10 minute drill, you're getting way more than that 5 to 10 minutes back in terms of your ability to now do things in a much better, smarter way.
Would you share the YouTube? I know we were going to talk about
I mean,
now's a great time.
Just the easiest way to get out there is search my name, Randy Dean. I think that the handle might be Randy Dean Timely Man or something like that. But if you search Randy Dean, I should be right near the top, and if you click on one video, then you can get to the channel if you'd like to subscribe. And shameless plug for me, I'm only 48 from 5,000 subscribers. So
we'll get you over that.
Get me over the hump here. That'd be awesome.
I will. You showed it yesterday when you were on the staff. There's so many great videos, so everyone should go follow because there's a lot of great content there. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the other technology, maybe beast. I think 5 to 10 years ago when we left work, we were kind of able to leave work, and I think now with cell phones and all the things that our phones can do, that work can kind of follow you, especially access to email. I'm going to say this. Do you see this as a helpful addition to work or a harmful addition? And just what can people do around, their phone creating this like constant access to email?
Yeah. Helpful or hurtful? Yes. I think it's both.
Yeah.
I think it really depends on the organization and also the individual. Some organizations are frankly toxic. They expect 24/7, 365, never-ending constant access no matter what. And the problem with that is that you're going to potentially push people to burnout.
Yep.
And then and whenever you push a group of workers to burnout, here's what I've seen happen regularly. The best people leave. The people that remain complain. It could destroy the ethic and ambiance of the workplace. But if you can give people like reasonable, here's what we're going to do. We're only going to call you when you're not in the office if we really, really need to. And, we'll let you know maybe by text or phone call if there's a critical email you need to see so that you don't have to feel like you're always checking your email. Yeah. And I think if you do some just really basic, simple things like that, I think most people would be, that's cool. I know my wife's company, when she goes on vacation, now I can't get away with this myself. I don't do this.
Yeah.
But when she goes on vacation, she says, I'm on vacation. I won't be checking email at all. And then she's got people in the office that if something was really critical, they would call her. And I think that gives her that
healthy
space to be able to rest, rejuvenate, recharge. I'm a small business owner, solopreneur, deciding to do everything virtual with independent contractors, that whole thing. I got to look.
Yeah.
But what I try to do, I've discovered that my daughters and my wife on vacation tend to sleep in. I try to get up about an hour before them and just quickly go through, make sure it's all cleared out, triaged. If I don't have to do it, I'm going to save it till after the vacation. And, by following sort of that philosophy, I think it works well. But I think you've got to look at setting reasonable boundaries both for your organization and for yourself as an individual to manage these in a way that the phone doesn't take over you. It should be a tool that helps you get things done and that you own, not the other way around.
Something you said in there, I think it's probably painful for some of the people that are listening to this to hear, but I think so many times as maybe the owner or the entrepreneur, you're used to working all the time, and then you have this expectation for the team that is not healthy. And so I think getting through that and realizing that a lot of times it's the expectations that you set that are going to drive a lot of that. And being aware of that, I think, is important. Maybe specifically to phones, because it's not just email, right? I mean, the people that manufacture these phones and apps are really good at distracting us. So, you have email, social media, texting, about everything now is accessible on there. Any best practices around maybe just productivity or management of your actual phone?
Yeah, well, I have to go to my 16-year-old who taught me this when she was 12 or 13. I was just watching her one day, and she was like, I don't know, it might have been pre-TikTok, but she was doing something like TikTok, and all of a sudden this little thing pops up on her screen. And it said, you've reached your daily allotment. And she clicks it, and then she went and did her homework. And I'm like, who taught you to do that? She goes, I just figured it out myself. I didn't want to spend way too much time on this. 12 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive. Now, is she doing well? Oh, yeah. The kid is brilliant. And what I like is she's self-directed.
Yeah.
And she just realizes, a little bit of this is fun. There's actually really interesting science on this. People that look at their phones all the time and are constantly on social media tend to be the most anxious and depressed. Interesting. However, now here's where things get a little funky. People that occasionally look at their phones are actually more productive than people that never do. Wait, So all the time leads to anxiety and depression, but occasionally you are actually more productive. And you know why it is? They're giving themselves little mental breaks and they're staying basically in touch with their hive.
Yeah.
But they're not getting obsessed by it and driven by it so much that it becomes negative in their life, a negative influence. And so the idea of, maybe setting timers for certain apps. Also, one of the things I recommend in my smartphone class, for a couple days, just watch every notification popping up on your screen. And people are like, whoa, that's crazy. Why would I watch all my notifications? Because what I want you to do is figure out which apps are bugging you the most, and then ask yourself, do I want these apps bugging me this much? Because I remember, you can go into your app settings notifications in both iPhones and Androids and basically turn off notifications for certain apps. And I always make the joke, my life improved the minute I turned off notifications for Facebook and Twitter. That day, my life got better.
Yep.
And so watch it, because remember, for these app developers and these phone organizations and manufacturers, their whole business model is your eyeballs on that screen. And so they're trying to do everything they can to get you looking at it. But you got to step back from that and say, wait, is this healthy? Is this good? Or is this counterproductive? And then take some control of that. I would even say if you've got certain apps that have become truly addictive, might be a good time to delete the app.
I found one of the things I do, and not that I'm on a lot of social media. Twitter's about the only one I would spend some time on. I've even tried to cut that back.
Yep.
I did. I just deleted the app, and if I want to use it, I use it in my browser.
In the browser.
So I have to go to the browser, go to the website. It's not as functional in there either, right?
Yeah.
So it makes it a little harder to use. So that's been a good one. So maybe talk about this idea of distractions. Obviously, you have email, you have your phone, social media. Now we have Zoom, Microsoft Teams, all these different things. What are some things that you coach people on? Not just technology, but how do you stay focused in this uber distractful world that we all operate in now?
Well, when things get too complicated, going back to simple is good. And, one of the things that, I sometimes even think, boy, it'd be almost nice to go back to the paper planner. Because when I had that paper planner, I'd open up page 1 and I could see my whole list of key projects and responsibilities. Then on page 2, I had a daily task list that I would write out each day compared to my key projects and responsibility. And of course, page 3 was my calendar for today and a few days in advance. And I could see it all in front of me. And when you had that, it's like, oh, it's much easier to be strategic. Now we're getting this just never-ending bomb of inputs and potential distractions. But I still think there's something to be said about that. One of the things I teach in my longer Outlook and Google Workspace courses is, build yourself an annual plan every year. Make sure you've got something in writing. It doesn't have to be on paper, but in writing in your phone app or something that gets you clear on what's your goals, what are your key projects, work and personal, who are your key people, maybe what are the sub-projects. And then at least once a week, review those things and integrate them into your task list or your calendar. Now, remember, I said earlier, I want you to stop working your emails from your inbox and turn them into tasking calendar. So you've got a couple streams coming in here. You've got your emails and other inputs going into your task list and calendar, but now you've got your key projects and activities also reflected in your task list and calendar. And because that allows you to then see priorities a little bit better, especially if you sort them by priority, now all of a sudden you're in business to where you can go, And so what I'm telling people is, so many people make a really bad mistake, in my opinion, right at the start of the day. They walk into the office, maybe they don't grab their coffee, or they do, but they go in and open up their email. It's the very first thing they do, open the email. It's like second nature. I have a funny description of what I think I've got a really good final description of what email actually is. A whole bunch of squirrels and the occasional big angry dog. Isn't that email? That's email. Yeah. It's like, and so, but if you start your day just going right into that, you're basically asking the squirrels to come in and take over.
Yep.
And you're not on top of it at all. It's on top of you right at the start of the day. You're in reaction mode. You're fighting squirrels, right? And so I just am recommending, maybe a little 3 to 5 minute drill at the start of the day where you start by looking at your calendar, because wouldn't you agree your time should be more important than your email most of the time? And so look at your time, and don't just look at today's calendar. Of course, you want to look at how much time is blocked, how much time is open, but then look ahead a week or two. Anything coming I need to start getting ready for? And is there any big open blocks of time that maybe I should be more strategic with and block something for one of my projects that I'd like to make move a little bit more quickly? And you can only do strategic time blocking if you're looking ahead regularly. Yeah. It will not work if you're doing it on the fly. You got to be looking ahead to make that work. But here's the beautiful thing about blocking time on your calendar once in a while. You just took away somebody else's meeting too. Your calendar's blocked. They can't schedule the meeting there, because if you just leave it open, it's going to get scheduled. And so I'm just telling people, be more protective of your time and use it a little bit more strategically. That's a couple minutes to look today, look ahead a few days, block something, put something on your task list that you got to get ready for in a couple days. Then spend the next minute or two looking at that task list you've created and saying, wait, is this in right priority? Is there anything I really need to move up for today? Is this reasonable for today? And, I sort of give some strategies on how you can get to that reasonable level for a day in some of those YouTube videos. But once you've got your time in your task list, which reflects your key projects, but also previous inputs and emails and your people, all sort of the first 3 to 5 minutes of the day, what you've just done is now put your inbox in proper perspective when you do open it in 3 to 5 minutes. See, if you open that first, you're going to think a lot of those squirrels are the big angry dogs when they're not.
Yep.
But if you do that drill of time and task before email, now you'll be able to better identify, that really is the big angry dog. And sometimes I even tell people, you might do that 3 to 5 minutes and then you open your email and your email completely takes over. But if that happens, then email should be taking over. It is the most important thing because you've just referenced it against your other priorities. Yeah. And then you work your day accordingly, moving back and forth between all these things.
I think there's a couple things in there. The scheduling time, one of the things, Darren Hardy's a close friend, and he talks about scheduling these 90-minute jam sessions. So, even Tamara on my calendar books every week, I have a 90-minute jam session where it's like it's scheduled in. She doesn't schedule over it to where I have that time carved out, because if you don't, it's everyone listening to it. I think why that's valuable is otherwise people call, they want to set an appointment, something gets scheduled into that. So I think that's a big one. And then selfishly, I had a question I want to ask you. One of the things that I've done for years now is I do kind of a Sunday focus day where I sit down, somewhat similar, right? I'm trying to look at what's coming up in the week ahead. What are the priorities, scheduling my top priorities for the week. Is that a good strategy, or are there some better things that you would even do around that?
It's actually a great strategy, because what you're doing now, David Allen, who I've mentioned a couple of times, he talks about, the 40,000 foot view, 10,000 foot view, and ground level. And so I sort of have taken that idea and I've said, well, ground level, that's email. That's right now, that's phone calls. That's people stopping by. That's ground level. That's you doing what's next. 10,000 feet is what we just described, which is, basically starting your day with a few minutes in your calendar and your task list to get things in proper perspective and prioritization before you dive into the chaos. 40,000 foot, though, would be that annual review where you're building your big plan. But what's interesting is, there should be something in between. And if you're doing like a sort of a little bit of a weekly review on a Sunday, that makes a ton of sense, because that's where you take a little bit more time than your normal 3 to 5 at the start of the day. Maybe you're 5 to 10. And what you do in that is you pull up that priority note or plan, which, the way I construct mine, I have my goals for the year on top, both work and personal. I have my list of people. That's the people that are helping me do whatever it is I'm trying to get done. And then I have my list of projects, activities, events with sub-projects identified. And what I try to do in that once a week plan is sort of look through and say, well, is something for each of these represented in my task list or my calendar?
Yeah.
And by doing that and doing that regularly, one, you're giving yourself this bigger picture reminder of here's what really matters. But then you're not only just reminding yourself, you're making tangible actions in your two primary day-to-day planning tools, task list and calendar, that will be reflected at least once a week. So, doing a step back like that at least once a week, I think makes a lot of sense. But then what I would also recommend almost everyone do is ask yourself that question once in a while: is this the horse I should be riding? Because I think what will happen is sometimes we get so into our busy on what we've decided to work on that we might lose focus on, is this really what I want to do? So watch your motivation too, because if you start getting a task list and a calendar that you just don't want to even work on anymore, that indicates something bigger is going on. Yeah.
Well, that may be a good kind of final question. Then I want to ask you a couple quick lightning round questions. But is people trying to implement some of these strategies, right? It can maybe feel a little overwhelming at first, and then you see some people try and go from, let's say, 0 to 100, right? Where it's like, I'm going to do everything. Any advice you have on just maybe steps to take to have some progress, and then also be able to measure and track the progress and encouragement around that?
Yeah. Do you remember that movie? Probably has to be 20 years ago now. What About Bob?
Yeah.
Bill Murray,
Yeah.
Richard Dreyfuss as his
Therapist.
counselor, psychologist. Baby steps. I always tell people, Rome wasn't built in a day. I mean, if you can block 2 days and do an intensive personal review and reorganize everything in your inbox and build your project plans and lists and build secondary notes in your phone to have access to everything when you need it, and, clean up all your clutter in your office, both work and home, good for you.
Was that a shot at my office as we were moving stuff around?
Well, no,
today?
because I think it's pretty noble that you were able to turn this into a podcast facility like this so quick. But what I think will work better for most people is look at the resources that are available. Could be a book, could be a podcast, could be an online tutorial video, could be a training session. Find something that would really help you with whatever it is, work or personal, right now, and go for the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. That's good.
But then never stop adding something new. That's why I said that little 5 to 10 minute investment at least once a week to picking up one new little tip, one new little skill. Honestly, I sort of think what I've built here in terms of what I'm teaching was some in-depth training followed by a whole bunch of little skill acquisition.
Yeah.
And then organizing it all together to make it work better for, first it was Microsoft Outlook users, now it's Outlook and 365 users. Then about a decade ago, I had some clients say, hey, we're using Google now. Okay, so I'll do Gmail and Google Workspace too, and let's figure out how to use these devices in our pockets a little bit better and smarter too. And, it was sort of like, okay, well, here's the foundation, but then add in the tips. And if you can just take that little bit of time to add in that one tip that every week or two, within 6 months to a year, you'll have a completely different work style. Absolutely a completely different work style, because you will be so much better, more efficient, and efficiency is overrated in my opinion. I always I read it once, I would much rather be somewhat inefficient and highly effective than highly efficient but not terribly effective. And, now the goal is to be both effective and efficient.
Yep.
But
given the choice.
Yeah, given the choice, I would go for effectiveness over efficiency any day.
That's good.
But you got to make that little investment, or else you're just going to, if you don't make any effort to find those tips, you're pretty much locked into what you're doing right now.
That's really something I love that you said, and joking a little, but even in my office, there are some things I probably need to clean, organize, do. But when I look at how much time that would save me, it's not much, right?
Right.
It doesn't really do much. So I think for most people that probably listen to this, email is probably one of those first things they should figure out how to tackle a little bit better, right? It's where you spend a lot of time. And so if you can tackle some things there, that's good. So great advice. And I love the effectiveness. Let me ask you a couple quick lightning round questions.
Sure.
I've asked everyone these at the end of the podcast, but I go back to the start of COVID, and I said, I think COVID made all of us kind of rethink things in general, but is there maybe a lesson you learned over the past few years that started with COVID that maybe made the way you think about things change, and a lesson that you're going to carry forward with you for the rest of your life?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I got from COVID was that speed is overrated. Whereas depth of experience is underrated and underutilized. And so I think we get ourselves, so deep on that treadmill, running, that we sometimes lose sight of the fact that maybe it's better to occasionally step back and try to dive deep. And so what I've been trying to do a bit more choicefully with content development of my e-learning programs, and then partnering with some of the e-learning providers that are out in the industry and building out my YouTube content. And I'm even in the process now of writing ebooks. Give yourself those deep chunks of time and more sizable projects, and make sure you fit at least one or two of them in and work on them regularly.
Yeah.
Because that's where you're going to get that real, I'm doing something here. Otherwise, it just feels like you're just doing the grind, spinning wheels.
I think you could even apply that. I've heard so many people talk about just relationships and understanding how important those are, depth in those versus, maybe speed or shallowness of some of those too.
Right.
So I think COVID made us rethink a lot of that, working on stuff that's meaningful. So, okay, second question. Is there something you're doing this year to drive your own personal growth and development that you're excited about?
A couple things, actually. Last November, right before Thanksgiving, I released a new rewrite of my book, Taming the Email Beast. And I made it much shorter, 8 chapters, integrates with my YouTube channel. And I'm taking that same model, same software, and just a couple days ago, I started work on another new ebook. I've got the base outline about 80% done on the next step, which is how to use your Outlook more strategically from a time and project management perspective. So that's coming soon.
Cool.
And what I'm hoping to do is build a whole series of these little ebooks to match up with my programs and add even more value for my clients. So, and I'm just going to sort of stepwise my way through my programming and try to get that together. The other thing that I have been actually choicefully trying to do, I mentioned YouTube. I'm a little bit of a YouTube addict, but I'm trying to use it in a way that is positive. And I go out and I'm trying to find, actually sort of interesting, even stuff on like philosophy, because I'm trying to just sort of, and that helps me with slowing myself down.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been studying a bit lately is stoicism. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's not a bad way to live life, be a little bit more stoic because, you can either let them get you mad or not.
Yeah.
It's really your choice, not theirs, so.
That's great. Have you read Ryan Holiday's the Daily Stoic?
I've been watching
it's
some
a
of
great
his
devotional he has.
I've been watching some of his videos actually because he's got a really good YouTube channel with a whole lot of really good content in that whole area.
That's cool.
But I've even been watching stuff from like Seneca and Marcus Aurelius and looking at some of that stuff from like a couple thousand years ago.
That's good. Well, that's a good transition. Speaking of books, is there a book, can't be yours, I always say, but is there one book that you've recommended the most to other leaders or entrepreneurs?
Oh gosh, I'd have to say 2 books. David Allen's Getting Things Done. Clearly, but also Stephen Covey's, or Covey, I think is how he said his name, 7 Habits.
It's great ones.
Because those 2, I think when you put the content of the 2 together, David Allen is so good at just giving you that practical, tactical, here's how you really get your stuff done. But Stephen Covey was fantastic at getting you to think about that bigger realm and bigger picture and really making first things first.
Yep.
Yeah, that whole concept of, really getting yourself there. And I mean, both of those books, I think David Allen did a rewrite of his a few years ago, but I think both of those books are probably 20 years old, but I still think they're some of the best things you can get out and read.
Right? So,
yeah,
that's a big part. Okay,
Yeah.
Final question. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, wow. Best piece of advice. I'm going to say, honestly, taking that time every year to step back, ask yourself the question, what do I want to do next? Is what I'm doing now right? And then building out a plan. And I remember I read a Dwight Eisenhower quote of all things. He said, plans are useless. Planning is indispensable. Because what planning does is it gives you a pathway to go down. And no plan ever works.
Yep.
But if you have a pathway to go down and you start going down the path, and then you also have the ability to use creative problem solving to deal with the issues you weren't expecting, you can still get to the destination potentially. So never expect your plan to work, because if you do that, you're just going to be frustrated.
Yeah.
You'll always be frustrated if you think your plan should work perfectly. Build the plan, execute it, and then say, ooh, wasn't expecting this monster. How do I slay this monster?
That's really good advice.
Yeah.
So, Randy, it's been a pleasure. I would say this, I can't recommend you highly enough. So as people listen to this, you do a lot of work with a lot of businesses.
Oh, yeah.
We've had you in a bunch, and I'm sure we'll have you back in a bunch as we continue to bring new people in. But for people who want to learn more, I know you talked about the YouTube channel, but any other places they can connect with you online?
Yeah, the easiest way is just go out and check out my website. It's as easy as randalldean.com. And also the YouTube channel, you can search Randy Dean. I also keep a pretty active presence. The social media I use the most is LinkedIn.
Okay.
And so you can also find out a little bit more about me out there. And I post a lot of my articles and posts and things like that to LinkedIn. So good place to, connect, follow, whatever.
Yeah, so much great content you have out there. I highly recommend everyone go check it out. You've been a valuable resource for us here, so I appreciate it. And for those who listen to this, please make sure you go share this podcast episode with a lot of people. It can impact a lot of people in your organization. So appreciate it again, bud.
And get me those last 48.
Yes, right. We'll get you over 5,000. So
Awesome.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks a lot.